Hello, my name is Nicole Jimenez, and this is my social justice quilt. So to start, let's go over briefly about my history and background. So as a child, I was sick constantly. I would get sick for 1 week, get better, and then be sick for another 2 weeks, and the pattern would just repeat over and over again. As a result, I developed an admiration for the doctors and nurses that would help me become better, thus leading to what was my career goal for most of my life, wanting to be a pediatrician. As a child and currently, my interest lied in learning how things worked. I liked to know why we created the country that we did. Why was the sky blue? Why did I learn differently from other children? And as far as reading goes, I liked looking into the minds of the characters. I liked seeing their motivations. Why did they choose to act this way? And what were they thinking when they did this? And such, thus leading to my later interest in psychology. So, another thing that's important was that I was born to formerly undocumented immigrants, and this situation put quite a bit of stress on myself, because as the eldest child, I felt that I would be responsible for not only myself but for my younger siblings. If something were to happen, what would I have to do to make sure that we were all taken care of? So in the back of my mind, I was constantly scared and worried for my parents and basically for my family, which put, like I said, a lot of fear and stress, but it didn't worry me all the time, just because I tried to focus on the happy moments that we had right now together. Another thing was that I was concerned whenever I would see that they were not receiving the same care and benefits as me, because I was a citizen, but they weren't. And it seemed unfair to my younger mind to see that they were doing everything other adults were doing. They were paying taxes, they were working, they were following the laws, but they weren't getting medical care, they weren't getting social security benefits, and yet they were just like everybody else. And so, like I said earlier, I originally had wanted to be a pediatrician, but as I grew up, I learned more about mental health and psychology, and just my curiosity ended up leading more towards learning about how did the mind work, what built my personality differently from other people's personalities, why was it that these people learned this way, why did this event affect me differently from other people, what made me different, what made us the same. And so eventually in high school, I switched my career goals from being a doctor to becoming a psychologist. Thus, in this past year, I received my bachelor's degree in psychology and business economics from Cal State Fullerton, and am currently pursuing my master's degree in clinical psychology here at Dominguez Hills. So, these are some of the values and beliefs that developed because of my past and my history. I learned that the mind should be taken care of. It's just as important as taking care of your body, because the body and mind, it works in a feedback loop. They're connected. What harms one could harm the other one. But some people don't quite acknowledge that, and they neglect one part. People tend to focus on just their physical body, and they don't recognize how much the stresses of their life are harming them. So I learned that it's just as important to take care of your mental health. Another thing that I believe is that people deserve access to any help they require, and they shouldn't be scared or hindered by a lack of resources or because of stereotypes and biases. There's no reason for them to be treated any differently than other people just because of where they're from or how they look or how they act. Everyone deserves to be helped. Which brings me to my social justice issue for this semester. I am looking at undocumented immigrants and the barriers that they face getting the resources that they should have access to in order to live their daily living. So who are the undocumented immigrants? Simply put, they're people. They are here for basically the same reasons anybody else is. Just like legal residents, they're here because they're asylum seekers, they're refugees, they want a better life, they want a better job, and the only reason that they're illegal is because they might have an expired visa, or they just simply didn't have papers to cross in the first place. In some cases, they were brought here as children by their parents and had no choice because they're minors, and what can a minor do in the face of an adult telling them what to do? There are, however, unfortunately, some people who enter for illegal purposes, such as drug or human trafficking. The flip side of that is that sometimes they have no other choice. If they're seeking a better life, or they're running away from unfortunate circumstances, they might not have many options other than to listen to people who are preying on them in their time of weakness, telling them, we'll help you get to where you want to be, to get away from where you want to run away from, in exchange to this for me. As you can see in the graph, the majority of the reason for migrating to the United States is for economic opportunities and a better life for their family. In the case of my parents, they came here because most of their family was here. Their siblings, their aunts, their uncles, they're here in the United States, and my parents wanted to come to be with them, to be with family rather than staying back in their native country where not many of us were there. So, some statistics. As of 2017, there was an estimated 10.5 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Unlike common belief, they do pay taxes. About over 7 billion of sales tax, over 3 billion of property tax, and over 1 billion of personal income taxes collected in 2014 here in the United States were paid by undocumented immigrants. Another common belief is that the numbers of undocumented immigrants coming into the United States were rising over the years, and that may have been true for some time, but the bottom graph here on the side shows that the numbers have been steadily decreasing since 2007-2006 to the point where it's now currently 10.5 million in 2017. Despite all of this, they're still not eligible for most federal benefit programs such as Medicare, Social Security, and food stamps simply because they don't have the paperwork. They don't have a Social Security number. They don't have work authorization. There are a variety of resources available to help undocumented immigrants. One thing would be the Family Preparedness Plan, which, like the name states, it helps the family of undocumented immigrants prepare for the event where the worst can happen. Someone is sent back to their native country. What will happen to the children? What will happen to the dependents, and so on and so forth? And this part of the plan could help make sure everything happens according to the wishes of the head of household or whomever. Other offices help provide financial and legal aid. So there are some offices that assist in the DACA Act. They help dreamers, the children who are brought into this country by their parents. They help these dreamers get federal financial aid when they're pursuing higher education, so they can be capable of getting a degree and getting a good job, which would help them later on in life when they're pursuing their legal residency and citizenship. On that same note, there are some offices that help make sure that these undocumented immigrants have all the paperwork and evidence necessary to pursue the legalities, the whole court trial, the petition to get legal residency. They also help in the case of figuring out what went wrong. If they didn't win the petition, they didn't win the case, how can they try again? What could they fix? More importantly, to this period of time of the pandemic, there are offices that help with healthcare issues. So as we know, healthcare here in the United States can be pretty pricey, and these offices help make sure that they're receiving adequate care, because a big concern right now is how will they pay for medical expenses when there's nothing to help them. They don't have much of an opportunity to get well-paying jobs because they don't have legal authorization to work yet. So how will they pay for the medical bills if it's thousands and thousands of dollars? These offices will help with that kind of problem. Most of the challenges and barriers to getting this kind of help, however, are interconnected. One of the major ones being the language and cultural barriers. If you're trying to get help immediately, there's no time to learn the language if you don't already know it, so it can be very hard communicating that you need help and how to even find that help. Even if you do spend years learning the language, here in America it's predominantly English, there's still legal terms and nomenclature that you don't know how to translate into a way that you will understand. There are translators that can help with that, but once again, if you don't know how to even ask, then there's a problem. Another thing is the fear being deported, of being separated from your family, and this could cause them to not reach out to these offices or to other people to get the help that they need to become legal residents, or to get their work authorization permits and such. This in part is because of the negative biases and stereotypes that create a hostile environment. They see that other people are accusing them of not paying taxes, of being drug dealers, and of stealing jobs and such, and how can they trust anybody, really? How can they know they can trust anybody to ask for help? And which is a problem, because the help is there and they don't know they can reach it, or they do know they can reach it, but they're scared to reach out, which isn't fair to them at all. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.